Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning in and listening to our podcast, Brick by Brick, Building Generational Wealth Using Single Family Homes. I'm Jason Engelman, CEO of Freaky Fast Capital Group and Freaky Fast Home Buyers, with my co-host and also our Investor Relations Manager, Collin Campbell.
That's right. You had to get the last name right because you didn't want to confuse me with our other Collin.
I almost said Collin Rich.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. Wearing my fancy glasses today because today we're doing a special edition of the podcast. We're doing fast-hitting news clips from the finance world, and I'm just going to hit you with them. Haven't prepared you beforehand. I love it. And so I'm going to hit them with a question. We're just going to see, hey, how does this affect our investors and what's happening in the world?
Absolutely.
Right. So right now, Trump's pressuring Jerome Powell to continue to lower interest rates. Do you think that Trump is impinging on the Federal Reserve's independence by putting so much pressure on them?
First of all, if it were up to me, I think that whole group should just be abolished.
The Federal Reserve?
Yeah.
Hot take.
Yeah, well, if you think about it, the Federal Reserve, and I was there. Tori and I went to Jekyll Island. If you guys want a very cool historic vacation, but also relaxing, go to Jekyll Island. That's where the Federal Reserve was created. And it was the the winter houses for the Rockefellers, the JP Morgans, and different people that happened to be a part of creating the Federal Reserve. And the Federal Reserve was created there by business guys who at that time had an agenda for their businesses. And I'm not crapping on them, but in some ways, I think the Federal Reserve is unnecessary. And I see the point and the need for them, but let's face it, can you say that they've done a great job? If I line up 10 different people right now and ask them what their opinion is, and I'm talking business guys, Mark Cuban, and just line up the Shark Tank cast for a minute. Yeah. It's amazing how Mr. Wonderful and Mark Cuban have completely different opinions on tariffs and completely different opinions on presidential policies and platforms, but yet they're both successful guys. So then the question begins to ask, well, what is the correct answer? Because to me, I think it's almost kind of like, damn if you do, damn if you don't, or it's going to work if you do, work if you don't. For some people, the tariffs have been an absolute pain in the butt. But for some people, they would say, hey, the tariffs have put a lot of money back into the government and has really been super successful. So who's correct? And so going back to the question of, do you think Trump is impeding on their independence? I personally can care less about their independence. I personally don't think they should exist. That's just a hot take from me. I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know. I was not prepared for that answer, honestly. But I'm super intrigued by that position because then I think the question for me would become like, well, who decides the monetary policy of the United States? Because I think the idea of an independent financial institution like that would be that they wouldn't be swayed by a political agenda.
But can you honestly say that they haven't been in the last 4 years?
I don't know. I would say that Jerome Powell has at least appeared to be unassuaged by most of his critics. He seems to be pretty steady in terms of what his messaging has been, and that's been a pretty clear to me across bipartisan lines, at least in my perspective of what he's been saying.
And I'm not saying that I disagree with that. to be quite honest, I really don't know. Yeah. Who knows what's actually being said and done behind, closed doors in the smoky rooms. To me, okay, let's say the Feds cut rates. What happens?
Well, we do see the ripple effects that take place throughout the market, right? You see interest rates in the bond and treasury yields change. You see mortgage rates change. After that point, you see some ripple effects that occur from that place.
Sure. And so I think there's a lot of positive that will come from it.
Yeah.
But then there could be a lot of negative. You could see inflation just skyrocket, which I think is what the Feds are afraid of happening.
Right.
But also, we've been kind of in a really weird spot where they probably should have dropped rates. And let's face it, I'm not going to pretend like I know all the answers when it comes to the way that the Fed rates work and how inflation works, because every time you turn around, you feel like you get new information that contradicts the information that you were just given a couple days prior. So for me, I'm still trying to fully understand inflation and the aftermath of it. What I do know is that's why I'm such a strong component of single-family homes.
Right.
Like it's going to outpace inflation every time. And I'm sure people probably get tired of hearing me say that, but fact is fact. Now the housing market for first-time home buyers, it's becoming a lot more difficult maybe to buy a home because the prices keep going up and up and up. And what hasn't kept pace is income.
Yeah.
That's really struggling. So I don't know, man. It's 6 one, half dozen the other, in my opinion.
Yeah. Fair enough. All that to say, I think for our investors at home, the advice to be spoken is, in our opinion, maybe don't be swayed by what the Federal Reserve is doing, because we have no idea what they're going to do. And you've got to keep finding investment opportunities that work for you, whatever the Federal Reserve does.
100%.
So, you brought this up, but another news, first-time homebuyer median age has now risen to 36.3 years old. Did
Interesting.
You know that?
I did not know that.
Yes. And now, here's another fact about home ownership. Millennial home ownership, my generation, is at 54.9%, which trails historical norms by 3 to 5 percentage points.
Interesting.
Yes.
Which is actually a concern, and let me give you why I think it's a concern.
Yeah.
The millennial generation is the largest generation to this point. Yeah. The Gen Z may be bigger than that. The millennial generation, if only 50% has moved into the housing market, that means there's another 50% that's just waiting to move in, and they're probably waiting to move in when feds drop, right, when interest rates come down.
Yeah.
So if that happens, again, the housing market's going to scream. That's wild. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Additionally, did you know this? According to a recent survey, 68% of baby boomers plan to age in their current house rather than downsize. So essentially,
what percentage?
68% of baby boomers.
Interesting.
So essentially, the main concern there being that's going to constrain inventory even further, because typically that once you reach a certain age, right, you choose to downsize and get a smaller place to live. But at least according to current survey, they're saying, hey, those people are choosing to stay in their bigger houses.
Yeah. That's interesting. Well, again, it goes back to interest rates.
Yeah.
9 out of 10 have interest rates less than 4%. I've seen some stats maybe even less than 3%. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't matter if you have a super big house. If it's cheap, and the value keeps growing, they may not want to sell. They may just let it ride and then pass it down to their kids, or ride till they can't stay there no more, and their kids kick them out, saying, "Hey, mom, you got to go to go to a retirement center. You got to go to assisted living." But that's very interesting. And again, it's only going to make the housing market crisis that much crazier.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. Well, let's talk about this one then. Changing topics slightly, do you think that the stock market is inflated right now in terms of the pricing that we're seeing?
Man, my first instinct is to say yes.
Okay.
We're at all-time highs. Where are those highs coming from, per se? Mm-hmm. I do think, again, this is, I try to pride myself in being savvy with investments and investment opportunities. I will, be very transparent and say I am not as savvy when it comes to the stock market, just because I don't put a whole lot of money in the stock market. Yeah. For me, the stock market it's very, very shaky. At some point, it will come down. The question is when and why.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then the other thing is, because you got, to me, just from my limited expertise with the stock market, it's controlled by two things. One is controlled by people, whether that's fear or optimism.
Yes.
So there's rumors that the Feds now will cut rates, going back to that topic. And what happens? The next day, futures are up. Right.
Right.
And the investor's excited just based off the potential.
Right.
Then all of a sudden they hear bad news, and then boom, they start selling. So the personal touch of fear or optimism drives prices. But then the second thing that drives the stock prices is a P&L, a quarterly report from the company that you have stock in. And so there's this give and take from two different sources that, to me, I think can be part of it. The P&L doesn't inflate. A P&L is a P&L. The fear of the optimistic approach, I think, can be inflated to an extent.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, so I'll give my 2 cents on this one. I think right now what we're seeing in the stock market is primarily an overinflation due to AI hype. I think there's been so much just press and glamour kind of around the whole AI boom that people are trying to talk it up like it's the next best advancement in technology. And in a lot of ways it really is, right? AI is something that has kind of changed the landscape of the world that we're currently living in. But I think to an extent, I think we're seeing some people start to see, man, maybe this isn't actually living up to the hype. And people put a lot of money into it. They've invested a lot into those AI stocks like NVIDIA and, all Supermicro Computer and all the other ones out there. And, those have been some of the stocks that actually over the last couple of days we've been seeing some tumbles happening. And I think it just really, people are starting to see through, maybe this isn't actually as cool and as amazing as people have got it up to be. So for me personally, that's what I'm seeing.
AI is a very scary thing, and to me, AI is very similar. And I will admit when I don't know. I was born in the wrong century. I should have been born in the 1870s. I'm fortunate enough to know how to turn on my cell phone, get on my computer, that sort of thing. When it comes to technology and AI and ChatGPT, I still don't even use that. In fact, I don't even know if I say it correctly. For me, I am a little bit more old school. But it's interesting how AI, there's so many opinions, and to me, it just keeps evolving. It's kind of like a CRM or a database, that a lot of people use for their ops within their company. It's always changing. There's always something new. We use Monday.com for a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And it seems like when I try setting that, or when we start setting that up, every 2 months it's hey, have you heard of this new product?
Yeah.
It's better than Monday. And it's okay, but we just spent hours and thousands of dollars creating this. So I do think AI is constantly evolving. And there's always going to be kinks. I think what is good, and I think there's going to be parts that are beneficial, but I think it misses a human touch.
Yeah.
And so therefore, I think you're going to see that excitement, but maybe like you're saying that, that excitement will eventually wear off, that shine will go away. And that could be wrong. We could all be, they're saying now that we could eventually create our own AI to step in our place, which that technically is already somewhat created.
Yeah.
But to the place where we can literally do whatever and the AI runs everything for us. So then what's scary is, what happens if I die? Could Jason Engelman AI still run freaky fast for the next 20 years? That's kind of creepy. So who knows?
Yeah.
Again, that's why I like real estate. You kind of pretty much know what you get.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I personally like the real, tangible things I can touch and see type of investments versus ones that are, like I said, ones that you cannot necessarily see or touch. The weird thing is you can kind of hear and talk to AI, I guess, but you can't really see that as a tangible asset. So for me, that's the thing I like about real estate.
Absolutely. So I guess the way to end this is, I think investors need help. That's why a lot of people go to the stock market, because they've got some type of financial advisor. They got somebody who's managing their Edward Jones account or their Charles Schwab account, and they need that help. For me, if you were going to invest into a company, why not just go the private equity route in an alternative way? It's maybe a little more risky, but you're going to make more money. The problem is people don't necessarily know those steps or how to get in that. And here at Freaky Fast, yes, we are not a family office. Yes, we are not financial advisors. Yes, we are more operational company, an operator. But we want to run our business and the investment opportunities as a family office without being a family office. Meaning we find out what your needs are, what your goals are within your portfolio, and then creating the strategies to hit those for you. So if you find yourself in that spot, you're like, hey, I'm not maybe in a place where I need my own financial advisor or my own family office, my net worth's, under 5 million, but I could use some help. Make sure to reach out to Collin and I. We're going to talk more to you about than just our investment opportunity, but also see how we can help you succeed in your investment portfolio.
Yeah, absolutely. We're here to support you as an investor more than anything else in the world and help educate you on the wide world of finance and investing.
Hey, thank you so much for listening to our podcast, Brick by Brick, Building Generational Wealth. I'm Jason.
And this is Collin.
You guys have a great day.